When my son died, I believed the universe had taken everything from me. Then, 4 days after we scattered his ashes, his best friend called. "Mr. Bennett," he said, his voice low and uneasy, "I found a USB drive hidden in Ethan's workshop. You need to see what's on it. And please, don't tell Vanessa anything. I think she knows I have it." Those words stopped my heart. What could my son have hidden from his own wife? But when I drove to Edmonton and watched those files open on the screen, my whole body went numb. The man I raised had known he was in danger, and he had left me everything I needed to prove it. The memorial service was held in a small chapel overlooking the river. My wife, Margaret, had died 3 years earlier from cancer, and now our only child, Ethan, was gone at 41. A brain aneurysm, they said. He collapsed during his morning workout in the basement gym. His wife, Vanessa, had found him when she came home from yoga. She stood at the front of the chapel now, accepting condolences with the calm grace of a woman born for public sympathy. Black dress, simple pearls. Just enough tears to look shattered, but not enough to disturb her makeup. Vanessa had always been beautiful, the kind of beautiful that made people stop looking any deeper. Then I saw a man approach her, mid-30s, sharp suit, too polished for a funeral guest. They exchanged a few quiet words. He touched her elbow. She smiled. Not a grieving smile. Something else. Something familiar. I watched him leave through the side door without speaking to anyone else. Vanessa caught my eye and came toward me, taking my hands in hers. "Harold, why don't you stay at the house tonight? I can't bear the thought of you driving all the way back to Victoria alone." I had never liked her calling me Harold. I had tolerated it for Ethan's sake. "I'll be fine," I said. "I booked a room downtown." She squeezed my hands. "You shouldn't be alone right now." "We're family." The word felt wrong in her mouth. Still, I nodded and said I'd think about it. The truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about the phone call Ethan had made 11 days before he died. It had been nearly midnight, unusual for him. Ethan believed in routines. Sleep, work, order. He was disciplined about everything. "Dad," he had said, "I need to ask you something. If anything ever happens to me, will you promise to look after things? Make sure everything is handled properly?" I had laughed. "You're 41. Nothing's going to happen to you. Just promise me." There had been something in his voice, fear, maybe, or resignation. "I promise. But Ethan, what's going on?" "I can't talk about it now. I'll explain everything when I see you at Christmas." Christmas was only 3 weeks away. He never made it. That night, in the hotel room, I sat by the window watching city lights blur through my tears. I thought about the boy who used to help me build birdhouses in the garage. The man who called every Sunday without fail. The son who had been afraid of something and hadn't told me what. Then my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't know. "Mr. Bennett, this is Marcus Adiemi, Ethan's friend from university. We became business partners at the firm. I need to speak with you urgently. Can you meet tomorrow morning? Please don't mention this to Vanessa." I remembered Marcus. Ethan had spoken of him often. They had started an engineering consulting firm together 5 years earlier, specializing in environmental assessments for mining projects. Ethan had trusted him. We met the next morning at a quiet coffee shop far from anywhere Vanessa might be. Marcus was tall, thoughtful, and visibly nervous. His hands never stopped moving, adjusting his cup, folding and unfolding a napkin, checking his phone. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Bennett." "Call me Harold." He nodded, though he never used my name. "I found something 3 days ago," he said. "Ethan gave me a key to his workshop last year. Said I could use his tools whenever I needed. After the service, I went there. I don't know. I guess I just wanted to feel close to him." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small USB drive. This was hidden inside a hollowed-out copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, his favorite book. "What's on it?" I asked. Marcus looked at me with a darkness I'll never forget. "Everything." He opened his laptop and inserted the drive. Folder after folder appeared on the screen. As he clicked through them, my hands began to shake. Bank statements, emails, photos, audio recordings. Vanessa had been draining their joint accounts for 18 months. The transfers were clever. They had been disguised as business expenses, charitable donations, vendor payments to companies that didn't exist. The total was more than $800,000. The money had been routed to an account under the name Adrian Cole. "Who is Adrian Cole?" I asked, though part of me already knew. Marcus opened a photograph. It was the man from the funeral, the one in the tailored suit, the one Vanessa had smiled at. And in that moment, grief gave way to something colder. Because my son had not simply died. He had seen the danger coming. And from beyond the grave, he was asking me to finish what he no longer could. He was her personal trainer. They had been having an affair for nearly 4 years. The photographs were impossible to explain away. Vanessa and Adrian at restaurants, in hotel lobbies, walking hand in hand along beaches I did not recognize. The dates matched the times Ethan had been traveling for work, trusting his wife to be at home waiting for him. But even that was not the worst of it. Marcus opened another file. It was a letter Ethan had written 2 weeks before his death. "Dad, if you are reading this, then something has happened to me, and I need you to know the truth. I discovered Vanessa's affair 8 months ago. I hired a private investigator, documented everything, and consulted a divorce lawyer. I was planning to confront her after the holidays, file for divorce, and protect what assets I could. But 3 weeks ago, Vanessa found out that I knew. I do not know how. Maybe she saw something on my computer, or maybe Adrian told her. She has been different since then. Watching me, asking strange questions about my health, my exercise routine, my supplements. She has been pushing me to increase my life insurance. She keeps saying anything can happen and we should be prepared. Last week, she suggested I add accidental death coverage. I changed the beneficiary on my policy to you 2 days ago. She does not know that yet. Dad, maybe I am being paranoid. I hope I am. But if something happens to me that seems natural or accidental, please do not accept it at face value. Please look deeper. You spent 30 years investigating cases for the RCMP. You know how to find the truth. I love you. I'm sorry I did not tell you sooner. I was ashamed. I thought I could handle it myself. Your son, Ethan. I read the letter 4 times. My boy, strong, capable, proud, had been afraid for his life and had said nothing until it was too late. Marcus was crying silently. I should have seen that something was wrong, he said. He seemed stressed the last few months, but I thought it was work. I never imagined this. I looked at the date on the letter. November 28th. Ethan died on December 9th. That same afternoon, I drove to police headquarters with the USB drive and every document Marcus had given me. They sent me to Detective Laura Hayes, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a patient voice. She listened while I laid everything out in front of her. When I finished, she folded her hands. "Mr. Bennett," she said carefully, "I understand your concerns, but your son's death was examined thoroughly. The medical examiner found no signs of trauma and no indication of foul play. Brain aneurysms can happen suddenly, even in healthy individuals." "My son was healthy," I said. "He ran marathons. He had a full physical 6 months ago. Perfect results. There is no family history of aneurysms on either side." She gave a small nod. "That can still happen. These things sometimes develop without warning." Detective Hayes, my son wrote a letter saying he feared for his life. His wife was stealing from him, sleeping with another man, and pressuring him to increase his insurance coverage. He died 12 days after writing that letter. She looked down at the documents again. This shows financial misconduct and infidelity. That matters, but it does not prove murder. She let the rest hang between us. Without evidence of how someone might have caused the aneurysm, there would be no case. I left the station knowing no one was going to help me. Not yet. Not without more. But I had spent 32 years with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the last 20 in forensic investigation. I had worked crime scenes from Vancouver to St. John's. I had testified in dozens of trials. I had helped convict men who thought they had committed the perfect crime. If anyone could find the truth about what happened to my son, it was me. That evening, I returned to Vanessa's house, accepted her offer to stay in the guest room, and stepped into a role I had never imagined for myself. The grieving father, the trusting old man, the one who suspected nothing. "Thank you for being here," Vanessa said over dinner. She had made Ethan's favorite meal, roast chicken with rosemary potatoes, which struck me as either touching or obscene. It helps to have family close. "We should support each other," I said, the words heavy in my throat. "It's what Ethan would have wanted." She nodded and touched a napkin to the corner of her eye. "He loved you so much. He always said you taught him everything about being a man, about integrity." I watched her perform sorrow and marveled at the precision of it. Every gesture measured, every pause deliberate, every tear perfectly timed. Over the next week, I studied her routine. She left the house every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday afternoon, claiming she was visiting friends or attending grief counseling. I followed her that Wednesday. She drove to a condominium building in Mount Royal and let herself into Unit 412. From across the street, through a gap in the curtains, I saw Vanessa in Adrian Cole's arms. They were not even pretending to be careful anymore. I photographed everything I could. Her car in the visitor lot, his license plate, the timestamps on my phone, the shape of their bodies moving together behind half-closed blinds. Piece by piece, the picture was becoming impossible to ignore. At night, while Vanessa slept, I searched the house. Ethan's office had been stripped clean. His computer was gone. Paper files had been shredded. She had done her best to erase him. But people like Vanessa always believed they were smarter than everyone else. That confidence made them careless. In the basement, behind the furnace, I found a small plastic bag containing 2 unlabeled prescription bottles. One still held a faint trace of residue. I sealed it carefully and set it aside. Later, in the glove compartment of her car, tucked beneath the owner's manual, I found pharmacy receipts from a town more than 90 kilometers away. Cash purchases, unusual timing, all of them made in the weeks before Ethan died. My instincts began to settle into something harder. I needed records. I needed reports. I needed to know what had been examined and what had been overlooked. Marcus helped me reach someone at the medical examiner's office. The original review had treated Ethan's death as natural. There had been no reason, at the time, to suspect otherwise. Which meant no one had looked beyond the obvious. But there was still a way forward. As next of kin and executor of Ethan's estate, I had the authority to request additional review of the preserved materials collected before cremation. I contacted a private forensic laboratory in Toronto and arranged for further analysis. Then I waited. Waiting became its own form of punishment. I stayed in Vanessa's house. I played the grieving father. I watched her move through each day with that polished, unbearable calm. I watched her meet Adrian while my son's ashes sat in an urn on the mantel. One evening she made tea and handed me a cup with a soft, sympathetic smile. "You've seemed exhausted," she said. "This will help you sleep." I thanked her, lifted the cup, and only pretended to drink. When she looked away, I poured it into a potted plant by the window. By morning, the plant had withered. The lab report arrived 3 weeks later. I opened it in my hotel room and read every line twice. Then, a third time. The findings supported what I had feared from the beginning. Ethan's death was not natural. My son had been murdered in his own home by the woman who had once promised to love him. I sat there with the report in my hands and wept, not only for the fact of his death, but for the loneliness of it, for the fear he must have carried in those final weeks, for the humiliation of suspecting the person beside you and not being able to prove it before time ran out. I called Detective Laura Hayes immediately. This time, I brought everything: the financial records, the photographs, the receipts, the residue I had recovered from the basement, Ethan's letter, and the laboratory report that changed the entire shape of the case. Detective Hayes read in silence, her expression tightening with every page. When she reached the final report, she looked up at me. "This is enough," she said. "We are reopening the investigation as a homicide." At last, the room felt steady beneath me. She closed the file and rested both hands on it. "Everything you've gathered will be entered into evidence, but I need you to keep doing exactly what you've been doing. Stay close. Act as though nothing has changed. We need time to build this properly." "How long?" I asked. "A few weeks," she said. "We need warrants. We need the Crown on board. Your son deserves a case that cannot be broken." I agreed, though every part of me wanted to confront Vanessa that very night. I wanted to watch her face when she understood the lie had collapsed around her, but patience had been my profession for most of my life, and Ethan deserved more than anger. He deserved certainty. 2 weeks later, I sat once again in Vanessa's house across from the woman who believed she had outlived the truth. She thought we were there to discuss Ethan's estate. She had no idea the door was already closing. The real purpose of the meeting was to keep Vanessa occupied while police carried out search warrants at her house, Adrian Cole's condominium, and the pharmacy tied to the case. She served wine and cheese as though we were discussing ordinary family business. She talked about selling the house, maybe moving somewhere warm. "Ethan always wanted to travel," she said softly. "I think I'll honor his memory by finally seeing the world." The words sat between us like poison. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Detective Laura Hayes. "Warrants executed. Evidence recovered. Both subjects are being arrested." A moment later, Vanessa's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, frowned, and stepped into the next room. I heard her voice sharpen almost immediately. "What do you mean they're at his place? What are they looking for?" When she returned, the color had drained from her face. For the first time since Ethan's death, the performance slipped. "Harold, I need to go," she said. "Something's come up. Can we do this another time?" "Of course," I said. "Is everything all right?" "Yes, fine. Just paperwork." She was already moving toward the door. As I stepped outside and walked to my car, 2 unmarked police vehicles turned into the driveway. Detective Hayes stepped out of the first one. "Vanessa Bennett," she said, clear and calm, "you are under arrest for the murder of Ethan Bennett." I stood there and watched them place handcuffs on her in the driveway of the house my son had bought, furnished, and died in. She looked at me as they led her to the car, and at last her face showed something real. Not grief, not fear, hatred. The cold realization that she had been caught by the man she had mistaken for a harmless old widower. Adrian Cole was arrested at the same time at his condominium. Investigators found enough between the 2 properties and their devices to expose what they had tried to bury. Messages, financial records, hidden purchases, and private correspondence all pointed in the same direction. By the time the case reached court in September, the shape of the truth was unmistakable. I attended every day of the trial. I sat in the front row where Vanessa could see me each time she looked toward the gallery. The Crown built the case piece by piece: surveillance footage, financial records, witness testimony, forensic findings, Ethan's letter, read aloud in a courtroom so quiet you could hear people breathing. Several jurors wiped their eyes. One woman asked for a recess before the prosecutor could continue. Adrian did not hold up for long. Within days of his arrest, he agreed to testify for the prosecution in exchange for a reduced sentence. He told the court about the affair, the lies, the greed, and the promises Vanessa had made him about the life they would have once Ethan was gone. He spoke without looking at her. Vanessa's lawyer tried to shift blame. Tried to cast Adrian as the driving force. Tried to paint Vanessa as weak, manipulated, trapped. But the evidence was too strong. Their communications came from her devices. The financial trail pointed to her. Witnesses described the cracks in the story she had built so carefully around herself. One of Ethan's former colleagues testified that Vanessa had often hinted at being unhappy in the marriage, always in ways that invited sympathy without ever making direct accusations. Under cross-examination, it became clear how much of her life had been built on suggestion rather than truth. Even more damaging was the testimony of Vanessa's own sister, who told the court about strange questions Vanessa had asked long before Ethan's death, questions that had seemed theatrical at the time, but sounded very different in hindsight. On October 18th, after 6 hours of deliberation, the jury returned. I will never forget the silence in that courtroom. Guilty, the foreperson said. Guilty of first-degree murder. Guilty of conspiracy. Guilty of fraud. Vanessa collapsed where she stood. Court officers had to steady her as the verdict was read. Adrian, already sentenced under the terms of his deal, watched from another room. His future lay in ruins beside hers, both of them destroyed by the story they had written together and imagined they could control. Sentencing came 3 months later. Vanessa received life imprisonment with no possibility of parole for 25 years. The judge looked directly at her before imposing sentence. You betrayed a man who loved you, he said, a man who trusted you completely. You turned that trust into opportunity, and that betrayal sits at the heart of this crime. She stood motionless as he spoke. For once, she had nothing to say. She showed no remorse until she was caught. The coldness of what she had done was something the court could not ignore. Vanessa said nothing. She stared straight ahead, hollow and motionless, as the rest of her life narrowed into prison walls. The insurance company voided every claim the moment charges were filed. Vanessa received nothing. Adrian received nothing. Everything Ethan had built, the business he had grown with Marcus, the investments he had made, the house he had maintained so carefully, went into a trust I established in his name. It became the Ethan Bennett Foundation. Marcus runs the day-to-day work from Calgary. The foundation provides legal guidance, investigative support, and practical resources to families who believe their loved one's death was not what it seemed, but do not know how to make anyone listen. In 2 years, we helped 11 families. 8 cases were reopened. 5 led to arrests. After the trial, I returned to Victoria, to the house where Margaret and I had raised Ethan, the house where he took his first steps, spoke his first words, and slowly became a man I was proud to call my son. I still keep his childhood bedroom exactly as it was when he left for university. The hockey posters remain on the walls. His trophies still stand on the shelf. The telescope we bought together when he was 12 is still by the window, angled toward the sky he used to study for hours. Sometimes I sit in that room and talk to him. I tell him about the foundation, about the families we have helped, about the cases that might have been buried if someone had not kept asking questions. I tell him that his death came to mean something, even though it never should have happened at all. Detective Laura Hayes calls me from time to time. Sometimes she sends people my way, families in similar situations, people with doubts and fragments and instincts they cannot prove. I help them organize what they have. I help them document their concerns properly. I connect them with resources they would never have known existed. It is not the retirement Margaret and I once imagined. We were supposed to travel. We were supposed to grow old gently. We were supposed to spoil grandchildren that never came. Instead, I spend my days trying to make sure other families do not suffer the way mine did. There is purpose in that. There is meaning in knowing that every case we help carries someone's child, someone's parent, someone's brother or sister at its center, someone who deserves the truth. Last month, I received a letter from a woman in Winnipeg. Her husband had been convicted in the death of their daughter, in part because she had learned how to preserve and organize evidence using the Foundation's materials. Her daughter had been dead for 4 years before anyone believed it was not an accident. Now, the man responsible will spend the rest of his life in prison. She thanked me. She said the truth did not bring her daughter back, but it gave her death weight. It stopped the lie from being the final word. That, I think, is what Ethan would have wanted. Not revenge. Accountability. Not rage. Justice. The certainty that other people would be protected, that dangerous patterns would be seen sooner, that those who believed they had buried the truth would one day have to stand in its light. Tonight, I sit on my back deck and watch the sun sink over the Pacific. Across the water, the mountains of Washington rise in the fading light, violet and gold. Margaret loved this view. Ethan proposed to Vanessa on this deck once, under a sky that seemed to promise a long and happy life. Grief does not leave. It remains where it always was, a hollow space shaped exactly like my son. The missing phone calls, the missing visits, the terrible jokes that once filled ordinary days with warmth. But beside that grief now is something else. Not peace, not satisfaction. Something quieter, something earned. The truth uncovered. Justice done. A promise kept. Vanessa will spend decades in a cell, growing older with the knowledge that the father-in-law she dismissed as harmless was the one who brought the truth to her door. Adrian will leave prison with little left of the life he imagined for himself. What he traded his future for will never belong to him. Neither of them will ever profit from what they did to my son. The money they wanted became something else, a shelter for others, a way through the dark. Ethan's legacy is no longer only the life he lived, but the lives protected in the years after his death. Families heard, crimes exposed, truths brought into the open. It does not fill the hollow place, but it matters. Ethan, wherever you are, I hope you know that I kept my promise. I hope you know that everything you feared would be hidden was brought into the light instead. I hope you know that your father loved you enough to spend every skill he had, every resource he could gather, and every remaining year of his life making sure your death was not reduced to silence. That is what fathers do. We protect our children even after failing to protect them in time. We carry them forward. We make certain their lives continue to mean something. And yours did, son. Yours mattered more than I will ever be able to say. The Foundation helps another family nearly every month now. Each case is a small act of repair. Each one is a continuation of the work Ethan began when he documented Vanessa's betrayal and trusted that I would find it. He was braver than he knew, careful enough to leave the truth behind, hopeful enough to believe his father would follow it. I did, Ethan. I found it, and I will keep helping others find their own until I no longer can. After that, Marcus will continue, and the people we have taught will continue. And the families who once arrived broken and unheard will carry that work forward in ways neither of us could have imagined. Your name will not be remembered for the way you died. It will be remembered for what your death inspired, a mission, a promise. A light passed from one wounded family to another. The stars are coming out now. The same stars you watched through that telescope all those years ago. The same stars that were here long before us and will remain long after we are gone. But while I am still here, while I still have breath and purpose and a promise to keep, I will make sure your light is not forgotten. Sleep well, my boy. Your father is still fighting.